For those of you who watched our last video, you know that Cindy and I just installed a brand new set of Ohlins shocks on our 392 Jeep JL Wrangler. And I gotta say, the ride they provide is noticeably different than stock. And it's probably important for me to point out that we do have our compression and rebound on both the front and rear shocks set to the initial 10-click starting point that Ohlins recommends. And at that, I can tell you that our ride is definitely firmer. Not in a harsh, stiff coil kind of way, because Rancho does not make stiff coils. If anything, they make coils that are on the soft side of things. But in a responsive sports car kind of way. And I love it. And that is not to say that I didn't like the stock 392 Fox shocks, because they were nice and comfortable for daily driving. But for my taste, they were always a bit too soft, mushy, especially when it came to things like handling. But with these Ohlins, they definitely provide a lot less dive when braking, are a lot flatter in the turns, and when it comes to hard maneuvering. Now, anybody who knows me knows that I would be the first to say that ride quality is 100% subjective. And what I'm feeling right now, this is what I prefer. That said, I would also be the first to admit that how we have our shock setup right now may not be for everybody. If there is a downside to firmer, it's that you feel every crack, every imperfection in the road, especially at slower speeds. Now, at higher speeds, and when hitting bigger bumps, that's when a setting like this really shines. Of course, the benefit of adjustable shocks is that you can add clicks to soften up your ride, subtract clicks to firm it up, or dial in your ride to however you see fit. And unlike most high-end shocks of this size and price point, Ohlins gives you the ability to adjust both compression, and I really can't stress this enough, but rebound as well. Now, before we start testing these shocks out on what I know you really want to see on the trail, there is one thing that I really feel needs to be addressed first, and it's actually something that's been bugging me ever since we brought this Jeep home. And that one thing is this. For whatever reason, Jeep may have had the front bump stop towers on a 392, an Extreme Recon package, and from what I understand, even a diesel, all have ones that are 2 inches taller than what you'd find on a standard JL. Come on, let's go give it a look. As you can see here, the front bump stop tower on Pippi measures 5 inches. And as you can see here, our front bump stop tower on our 392 measures 7 inches. In addition to these stock Fox shocks being on the soft side, these taller towers mean that the amount of up travel we have is significantly reduced as well. Here you can see, even when completely stock, the base of the rubber jounce sat at about 1 inch from the axle. Of course, the jounce does crush, and that would ultimately give you 3 inches of total up travel. But even a light hit to them can be really annoying. And honestly, that happens a lot more than you'd think. Out in the desert and trying to go just a bit faster, we found that they bottomed out hard and all the time. Oh, yeah, sorry.
That was it.
Yep, like 30 is the most. Obviously, our 392 is lifted. And as would be the case with any good lift kit, it came with bump stop extensions that measure about as tall as we have lift. And the reason for that is to help to prevent the overcompression of your coils, as in squashing them down to the point where they no longer return to their original height. But there's another benefit to it, and that's to help prevent the bottoming out of your shocks. And as an added perk, it'll even help to prevent things like your tires rubbing your fenders at a full flex. Needless to say, we only have about an inch before the bump stop extension makes contact with the bottom of the jounce, and that means we have about 3¼ inches of total up travel. And at ride height, our Ohlins shocks have 5¼ inches of shock shaft showing. And that means there are 2 inches of up travel that we'd never get to use. And I'm pretty sure that's where the internal hydraulic bump zones are located. Now, I have been talking to Rancho and Ohlins about the possibility of running shorter bump stop extensions so that we can use more, if not most of the shocks. And Rancho seems to think that their springs will be fine. And as you can imagine, Ohlins is all over it. So that's what I'm gonna do now. Now these are stackable bump stop extensions made by Synergy, and I decided to install just one of these on each side of the axle, and mainly because they measure about 1.5 inches tall. And that means they're half as tall as what we have on now, and it would still give us about a 1/2 inch buffer zone to help prevent the bottoming out of our shocks. That looks a heck of a lot better. As you can see, we now have about 4.5 inches of vertical travel, just like we thought we would. Now we can take our 392 with its brand new Ohlins shocks and test it out to its fullest potential. When it comes to off-roading, this is what comes to mind for a lot of people. Slow, low-range crawling and over big rocks. And if that's all you're wanting to do with your Jeep, I might say that a set of Ohlins may not be the shock for you. Sure, they offer plenty of travel and stability, but there are a lot of other shocks out there that can get the job done. Well enough anyway, and in some cases, for a lot less money. However, if this is your idea of off-roading, where you like to spend the most time having fun in your Jeep, then a set of Ohlins shocks might be something you should consider. Sure, Cindy and I love rock crawling just as much as the next guy, but getting out and exploring the mile after mile of mountain and desert trails that we have out west, this is what we enjoy doing most. It's Nevada. Contrary to what so many seem to think, it is the reason why we run double throwdown systems on both of our other built-up Jeeps. More than the big flex, they help us to get from point A to point B and all the other stops in between that we always like to make, and in comfort. And so far, I gotta say, the ride that these Ohlins shocks are providing is pretty damn nice. These are the real deal. These are amazing. They're actually soaking everything up amazingly well. Well, that was a lot of fun, and check it out. The shock, it's warm, but way cool enough to touch, and maybe more importantly, without any fading whatsoever. And I should note, we did all that you just saw with the compression and rebound set to the initial 10-click starting point that Ohlins recommends. In fact, I'm kind of reluctant to make any changes at all, being that I've been loving the ride that we've had so far. But in the interest of testing things, I am now going to change them to 20 clicks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 makes 20. 7, 8, 9, and 10 makes 20. And for those of you guys who have noticed the zip tie that's on our shock shaft, I should point out that this was actually recommended by Ohlins for us to get a better idea of how much of the shock shaft we're actually using. And as you can see, about ½ of an inch is still unused, which is exactly what we're hoping for with our new shorter bump stop extensions. 7, 8, 9, and 10. 9 and 10 makes 20. And again, you could see that we put a zip tie on our rear shaft and there's about 1 inch showing. Actually, it looks like we haven't hit it in a while, but that is because we have 3-inch bump stop extensions in the rear, which we may actually lower that down to 2.5 so we get a little bit more use out of our shock shafts in that bump zone. But I'll have to order some up. All right, let's see how these things feel now. so Cindy and I have kind of talked about this for a bit, and I think at 20 and 20, what we've decided is that it's definitely softer. It's definitely smoother. The ride is clean, very comfortable. I think a lot of people, a lot of you will like it. But what we don't really like about it is that we feel like we lose a sense of control. I guess what I'm trying to say is that at 20 and 20, you have to drive slower to really take advantage of the smoothness. But at 10, you can move a heck of a lot faster. There's more control, more stability. It really soaks up the bumps better. Yeah. Maybe somewhere in between. I think we need to do more testing. So, I gotta say, I am really impressed with how well these Ohlins shocks perform both on and off-road. I mean, for a bolt-on shock, they really do a great job of improving handling, soaking up the bumps, and smoothing things out. And one of the things that I love most about them is how they handle adjustability. That is, we've tested out a lot of adjustable shocks in the past, and most of them only allow you to go from a firm to a firmer to a firmest setting. And the default setting is plenty firm enough, and anything more you add to it just makes for a harsh ride. But with Ohlins, they do it the other way around. They set you up on a firm setting and allow you to adjust it down to a softer and smoother one, and again, on both compression and rebound. And because I know it's coming, Ohlins is not trying to be or even compete with something like a double throwdown system. But I do think they'd give a lot of standard coilover setups a good run for their money, and maybe even offer a better ride. Sure, a coilover system will give you more travel, but they do require you to install new brackets, and they're typically run with long arms, and they definitely require a lot more labor to install, which means they're a lot more expensive. Being that these are bolt-on shocks, they're effectively an upgrade to whatever standard lift kit you have on now. And speaking of price, there was some confusion as to how much they actually cost. And I'm here to clarify that the MSRP $3,790 that you see on their website is in fact for all 4 shocks. And that means they're priced right in line with just about any other high-end monotube reservoir shock of similar size. Obviously, there's a whole lot more testing that we would love to do on different terrain and to see how they hold up long-term. And we hope to cover all that in future videos. Until then, please feel free to ask whatever questions you might have, and as always, I'll do my best to answer what I can. Thanks for watching.